5:47 p.m. That moment when the evening sun paints the neighborhood in gold and life seems to slow down. I was struggling with my phone in one hand, car keys in the other, and I spotted Mrs. Kaplan Eleanor wrestling with 3 overstuffed grocery bags. The paper handles were already tearing. Without thinking, I pocketed my phone and jogged over. "Need some help?" I offered. She looked up, relief washing over her face, and said, "Oh, Mason, you're a lifesaver." What I couldn't have known then was how those grocery bags would change everything, especially when, as we reached her doorstep, she whispered, "Stay, I have wine." 5 words that would flip my entire world upside down. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The spring evening had that perfect temperature, warm enough for just a t-shirt, cool enough that you didn't break a sweat walking up the slight incline of Maple Street. I'd moved to Riverdale last fall, a fresh start after finishing my degree in graphic design and landing a remote position with Pinnacle Media. The housing market had crashed just enough that a 27-year-old with decent credit could afford a tiny Cape Cod at the quiet end of the block. I knew most of my neighbors by sight, if not by name. The Johnsons with their twin toddlers, old Mr. Beaumont, who meticulously raked leaves each morning like it was a religious ritual, and Eleanor Kaplan, the elegant woman in the craftsman bungalow whose garden was the envy of the street. I'd waved to her a few times, exchanged weather pleasantries, but nothing more, till today, when I saw her struggling with those grocery bags. "Let me help," I said, already reaching for the heaviest bag that looked ready to spill its contents across the sidewalk. My timing couldn't have been better. The paper handle tore completely as I grabbed it. "Thank goodness," Alina sighed, adjusting her grip on the remaining bags. I thought I could manage 3 bags from the car to the house, but apparently that was ambitious. Up close, I noticed details I'd missed in our brief previous encounters. Her dark hair had elegant streaks of silver woven through it, pulled back in a casual knot. Laugh lines framed eyes that were a surprising shade of amber. She wore simple linen pants and a flowing blouse that somehow looked both comfortable and sophisticated. "No problem at all," I replied. I've had my share of grocery disasters. Once had a bag break right in the middle of the street, chased a cantaloupe for half a block. That earned a genuine laugh. I'm afraid the stakes are higher today. I've got a bottle of olive oil in there that cost more than I'd like to admit. We walked the short distance to her craftsman bungalow, its deep blue paint and white trim standing out among the more conventional houses on the street. The porch steps creaked slightly under our weight, and I noticed the detailed woodwork. Around the doorframe, not original to the house, but a beautiful addition. Alina somehow managed to free a hand to unlock the door, pushing it open with her hip in a practiced motion. The smell hit me immediately: herbs, something baking, and that indefinable scent of a home that's actually lived in. "You can put them on the kitchen counter," she said, leading the way through a cozy living room filled with books, artwork, and a surprisingly modern sectional sofa in a rich emerald green. The kitchen was a revelation, clearly renovated within the last few years, with white cabinets, dark countertops, and copper accents that gleamed in the early evening light streaming through windows that overlooked her famous garden. I set the rescued bag down carefully, making sure the threatened olive oil was safe. "Thank you," Alina said, placing her bags beside mine. She began unpacking items with the efficiency of someone who had a system. "I don't usually overcommit on the groceries, but I'm hosting my book club tomorrow and got carried away. Anything else I can help with?" I offered, not quite ready to leave this unexpected glimpse into her world. She paused, a package of imported pasta in hand, and seemed to make a decision. "Actually," her voice had a hint of hesitation, "I've just opened a really lovely Cabernet before I left for the store. Seems a shame to drink it alone." Her eyes met mine with a warmth that wasn't there in our sidewalk interactions. "Stay, I have wine. Consider it payment for the grocery rescue." I should have made an excuse. Should have remembered the freelance project waiting on my laptop, the call I was supposed to make to my sister. Instead, I heard myself say, "That sounds nice, actually." The smile that lit her face made something shift inside me. Out. Not romantic horror, at least. I didn't think so then, but a recognition of another human being reaching out past the polite neighborhood nods. "Excellent," she said, turning to a cabinet and retrieving a second glass. "I hope you like red. This one's from a small vineyard in Sonoma. My husband and I discovered it years ago." "Husband?" I asked, accepting the generously poured glass. "Ex-husband," she clarified, without bitterness. "Daniel and I separated 3 years ago. The divorce was finalized last year." She raised her glass slightly. "2 unexpected meetings." I clinked my glass against hers, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. 2 grocery bags with structural flaws. The wine was indeed excellent rich, and complex in a way that made me slightly embarrassed about the $12 bottles I typically grabbed from the supermarket. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Elena finished unpacking the groceries, I learned she was 52, worked as a curator at the city's modern art museum, and had lived in the bungalow for nearly 15 years. The conversation flowed with surprising ease. "So, Mason," she said, leaning against the counter, "graphic design for Pinnacle Media. How did you land there? They're quite prestigious." I nearly choked on my wine. "You know Pinnacle? I work with museums and galleries. Our worlds overlap." She smiled. "Plus, I notice things. Your laptop bag has their logo, and I've seen you working on their distinctive layouts through your front window." At my startled expression, she added, "My morning walk takes me past your house. I'm not stalking you, promise." We both laughed, and somehow that was the moment the evening shifted from polite neighbor interaction to something resembling friendship. Lena was in the middle of telling me about a disastrous exhibition opening, involving a temperamental artist and an unfortunately placed sprinkler when her phone chimed. She glanced at it and groaned. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Book club drama," she sighed. "Apparently we're now discussing a different novel tomorrow because Sharon couldn't finish the original selection. Let me guess, Sharon has a history of this." Elena's eyes widened with delight. "How did you know?" "She's notorious. Last month she insisted we switch from Ishiguro to a self-help book about organizing closets. I have a Sharon in every client meeting," I confessed. Different name, same energy. As the sky outside darkened, from gold to purple, Elena lit a few candles and moved us to the living room where the conversation deepened. She told me about growing up in Seattle, studying art history, her marriage to Daniel that had been good until it wasn't. 23 years, she said, refilling our glasses with a second bottle that mysteriously appeared. Not a failure, I think. Just complete. I found myself sharing more than I'd planned my struggle to find meaningful work after graduation, my parents' expectations that I'd return to Ohio, my sister's recent engagement to someone none of us had met yet. "Dating?" Elena asked, her question casual but her eyes perceptive. "Anyone special in Riverdale?" "Not really," I admitted. I had a thing with someone from the co-working space downtown, but it fizzled. We wanted different things. "Ah, the classic relationship killer." She nodded sagely. "What did you want?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. "Honestly? Connection? Something real?" She wanted? Convenience. I felt my cheeks warm, not entirely from the wine. "Sorry, that sounds cheesy." "Not at all," Elena replied. "Connection is everything. The older I get, the more I realize that." The grandfather clock in the corner, a beautiful piece I hadn't noticed earlier, chimed 9 times. Startling us both. "I should probably head out," I said reluctantly. "Ah, early client call tomorrow." Elena nodded, setting her glass down. "Of course, some of us still have to be functional adults in the morning." At the door, there was an awkward moment, the kind where you're not sure if a handshake is too formal, a hug too familiar. Elena solved it by lightly touching my arm. "Thank you again for the grocery rescue, and for staying. It's nice to have a real conversation." "I enjoyed it," I said, surprised by how much I meant it. "Maybe we can do it again sometime." Something flickered in her eyes, surprised pleasure. I couldn't quite tell. "I'd like that." Walking the short distance home under the now dark sky, I felt oddly energized. My phone had 3 missed calls from my sister and a text from my boss about tomorrow's meeting, but they seemed less important somehow, inside. My much smaller, much less put-together house, I opened my laptop to work on the freelance project. Instead, I found myself designing a set of bookplates, elegant ex libris markers for someone with Elena's refined taste. Just a small thank you gift, nothing more. The next morning, I left for the co-working space earlier than usual, coffee in hand. As I locked my front door, I spotted Elena in her garden, pruning roses with practiced precision. She looked up, smiled, and waved. I waved back, feeling strangely seen. By Wednesday, I'd finished the bookplates, a simple design featuring intertwined vines, and the phrase, "From the library of Elena Kaplan," in an elegant font. I printed them on quality paper, found a small gift box in my stash of packaging materials, and tied it with twine. Simple, thoughtful, professional. I dropped it off that evening, planning a quick handoff, but Elena insisted I come in to see the results of her book club gathering. "It looks exactly the same," I observed, glancing around the immaculate living room. "Precisely," she laughed. "I spent 3 hours cleaning for them, and they didn't even notice the new artwork." She pointed to a striking abstract piece now, hanging above the fireplace. She opened the box of book plates and gasped softly. "Mason, these are exquisite. Did you design these?" I nodded, unexpectedly pleased by her reaction. "Just a small thank you for the wine and conversation." "These aren't small," she said, running a finger over the embossed design. "These are thoughtful and beautiful." She looked up at me. "I'm making pasta tonight. Nothing fancy, but theirs. Plenty. Would you like to stay?" This time, I didn't even pretend to hesitate. I'd love to, and so began a pattern. Weeknight dinners where Elena introduced me to foods I'd never tried: Moroccan tagine, perfect risotto, a Spanish tortilla. That changed my understanding of eggs forever. Weekend afternoons, in her garden, where I'd bring my laptop and work, while she tended to her plants, our comfortable silence broken by occasional conversation. We were friends. That's what I told myself. Friends with an age gap, yes, but just friends appreciating each other's company. Then came the neighborhood block party in late June. Riverdale took its annual summer gathering seriously. The street was closed to traffic, grills appeared on driveways, and tables lined the sidewalks groaning with potluck offerings. Kids raced through sprinklers while parents chatted in lawn chairs. I brought my specialty bacon-wrapped dates that my college roommates had declared legendary. Elena arrived with an elaborate Mediterranean platter and a bottle of Prosecco. We weren't deliberately together at the party, but somehow kept drifting back to each other between conversations with other neighbors. I noticed the glances, the whispers behind plastic cups, particularly from Diane Wheeler, the self-appointed neighborhood social director whose preferred hobby seemed to be elaborate speculation about everyone else's business. "So, Mason," she cornered me by the dessert table, her voice syrupy, "you and Elena seem close. Lovely to see intergenerational friendships." The emphasis she placed on friendships made my skin prickle. "Elena's great company," I replied neutrally, loading my plate with brownies I didn't actually want. "Man," Diane hummed. "I imagined so." Such an experienced woman. She leaned closer. "Just be careful, dear. You know, she and Daniel split after she had that affair with her assistant curator, right? Much younger man. History has a way of repeating itself." Before I could respond, Elena appeared at my side, her timing impeccable. "Diane, those stuffed mushrooms were divine. You simply must share the recipe." Her hand brushed mine briefly, a silent communication I somehow understood perfectly. Later, as the party wound down and neighbors drifted home in the twilight, Lena and I found ourselves sitting on our porch steps, watching fireflies emerge. "I should warn you," she said without preamble, "Diane Wheeler is already writing our unauthorized biography." I snorted. "Yeah, she gave me the preview edition. Featured your scandalous past with a young curator." Elena's laugh faded quickly. "Ah, that particular fiction." She sipped her drink, eyes on the darkening street. "For the record, there was no assistant curator. Daniel left me for his 28-year-old paralegal. Diane's husband works at the same law firm. She knows this perfectly well." The quiet anger in her voice made me turn to look at her. Why would she lie about that? Because the truth doesn't fit her preferred narrative. Elena's smile was tight. In Diane's world, men don't leave unless women drive them away. Particularly women over 50 who dare to have careers and opinions. I felt a rush of protectiveness that surprised me with its intensity. That's ridiculous. That's life, Elena shrugged, but her shoulders remained tense. You should know what you're getting into being seen with me. People talk. Let them, I said, more boldly than I felt. I like spending time with you. I don't care what Diane Wheeler thinks about it. Elena studied me for a long moment, the porch light illuminating half her face, while shadows claimed the rest. You might care more than you think when it's your reputation they're dissecting. I doubt my reputation is all that interesting, I laughed. Give them time, Elena said softly. They'll make it interesting. That night, I lay awake thinking about Elena's warning, about Diane's insinuations, about the strange growing something between Elena and me that I wasn't ready to name. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. How's the big city graphic? Designer mom's worried you've gone feral without her cooking? Send proof of life? I hadn't told my family about Elena, not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't know how to explain her. My friend. My neighbor. The woman 25 years my senior, who was becoming the best part of my days. July brought a heat wave that turned Riverdale into a shimmering mirage. My tiny Cape Cod became an oven, its ancient window unit struggling against the relentless sun. One particularly brutal Sunday, Elena called. My air conditioning works, she said without preamble, and I have a pool. I'd never noticed a pool. You have a pool? A small one? In the backyard, behind the garden? Very private? I could hear the smile in her voice. Bring your laptop if you need to work. But mostly, bring yourself before you melt. Elena's small pool turned out to be a beautifully designed plunge pool, surrounded by natural stone and shaded by strategic plantings. It was like discovering a secret oasis. It is incredible, I said, setting down my bag. How did I not know this existed? Elena emerged from the house, carrying a tray with iced tea and sliced watermelon, while she wore a simple black swimsuit. Under a gauzy cover-up, and I was struck by how gracefully she moved, how comfortable she seemed in her skin. It's my hidden treasure, she explained, setting the tray on a small table. Daniel thought it was an extravagance. I thought it was salvation. One of our many compromises was keeping it invisible from the street. We spent the afternoon and out of the water, talking about everything and nothing. Elena told me about her latest exhibition challenges. I shared my frustrations with a particularly difficult client. When the conversation turned to my family, I found myself opening up about my father's disappointment that I hadn't joined the family construction business. He built something real, I explained, dangling my feet in the cool water, in his mind. I make pretty pictures on screens that disappear with a click. Elena considered this, her wet hair slicked back, droplets glistening on her shoulders. Creation is creation. Your father builds with wood and concrete. You build with color and composition. Both change how people experience the world. That way, it made perfect sense. Elena had a gift for that tree, framing my scattered thoughts into something clearer, more meaningful. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, neither of us made a move to end the day. Elena disappeared inside and returned with a plate of cheese, bread and olives, plus a bottle of crisp white wine that tasted of summer itself. To surviving the heat wave, she toasted, our glasses clinking in the golden light. 2 hidden pools in good company, I countered. Later, much later, after the wine was gone and the stars had appeared above us, Elena turned to me. On her lounge chair, her expression serious in the soft landscape lighting. Mason, she said, her voice different than I'd heard before. What are we doing? The question hung between us, heavy with possibilities. I could have deflected, could have kept us safely in the realm of neighborhood friends. Instead, I heard myself say, I don't know exactly, but I like it. I like being with you. She nodded slowly. I'm 25 years older than you, I know. People will talk more than they already do. Let them. It might not be simple. I reached across the space between our chairs and took her hand. Her fingers were cool from her wineglass, but they warmed quickly in mine. Simple is overrated. Elena's laugh was soft, almost sad, the confidence of youth. No, I said, suddenly serious, the recognition of something rare. We stayed like that, hands linked beneath the stars, until the automatic pool lights shut off, plunging us into darkness illuminated only by the moon. In that darkness, Elena leaned over and kissed me tentatively at first, then with a certainty. That left me breathless. Stay, she whispered against my lips, and I did. Morning found us in Elena's bed, sunlight streaming through gauzy curtains. I watched her sleep, the lines of her face softened, her silver-streaked hair spread across. The pillow. She was beautiful not, in spite of her age, but because of it, because of the life and experience written in every laugh line. Her eyes opened, finding mine immediately. No regrets in the daylight? She asked, a vulnerability in her voice. Hadn't heard before? I traced the curve of her cheek with my finger. None. You. Ask me after coffee. She smiled, but her eyes said what her words didn't. We settled into a new pattern after that. Not exactly dating, it felt both more casual and more significant than that word implied. I still had my house, but I spent. Most nights at Elena's, we cooked together, worked in companionable silence, discovered each other's bodies with an intensity that surprised us both. You've ruined me for men my age, she joked one evening as we lay tangled in sheets. They want to talk about their golf scores and retirement accounts. And what do I talk about? I asked, curious how she saw me. Possibility, she said simply. You see, the world is full of it. August brought my sister Lily to town, ostensibly, to show off her engagement ring, but really, I suspected, to investigate why my calls home had grown increasingly vague and distracted. So this is the famous Riverdale, she said, spinning slowly in my living room, which I'd hastily cleaned for her visit. Cute house, barely lived in, from the looks of it. I winced at her perception. I work a lot. Her raised eyebrow spoke volumes. And where exactly do you work these days? 'Cause your neighbors think you've joined a cult or something. What? Who did you talk to? Lily flopped onto my couch. Some lady walking a Pomeranian. Very chatty. Seemed concerned about your situation with an older woman? Diane Wheeler. Had to be. I felt a flush creep up my neck. I have a friend, neighbor, Alina. Friend neighbor, Lena repeated, eyes narrowed. Da, and how old is friend neighbor Lena? 52, I admitted. And yes, we're seeing each other. And no, it's not weird or creepy, or whatever that look on your face implies. Lily's expression softened. I didn't say anything, just be careful, okay? Not everyone understands relationships with big age gaps. There's nothing to understand, I said defensively. We connect. She gets me. I get her. If you say so, Lily shrugged. When do I meet her? The dinner at Olivia's bistro was Elena's suggestion-neutral territory for meeting. Lily, I'd spent the afternoon alternating between reassuring Elena she's going to love you and coaching Lily just be normal. Please now. Watching. Them chat animatedly about Lily's wedding plans. I wondered why I'd worried. A winter wedding is so underrated, Elena was saying, gesturing with her wine glass. The lighting is magical and you avoid competing with everyone's summer vacation. Schedules. Lily's eyes lit up. That's exactly what I've been telling everyone. December in the mountains, with snow falling outside the windows. Perfection. Elena nodded. My second favorite season for art installations, actually, is something about the stark contrasts. I relaxed into my chair, content to watch the two most important women in my life find common ground. Elena caught my eye across the table and smiled a private one, just for me, that still made my stomach flip weeks into whatever this was between us. So, Lily said, leaning forward conspiratorially after the waiter cleared our plates, how exactly? Did you two meet? Mason's been suspiciously vague, Elena laughed. I'm afraid the story lacks drama. Grocery bags, torn handles, a damsel in distress. And wine, I added. Don't forget the wine. Never. Elena placed her hand over mine on the table. a gesture both casual and intentional. I saw Lily clock it, her eyes widening slightly before her expression smoothed. "Well, I think it's lovely," my sister declared after a moment. Masons always had the social skills of a particularly awkward turtle. Anyone who can get him talking must be special. "Hey," I protested. "Am I wrong?" Lily challenged. Lena squeezed my hand. "He's wonderfully articulate about things that matter." The warmth in her voice made Lily study her more carefully. Something in her expression shifted, like she was recalibrating her assumptions in real time. Later, walking Lily back to her hotel, I braced for the interrogation. "So," I finally asked, when she remained suspiciously silent. "So, I like her," Lily said simply. "She's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" Lily considered this. "Someone trying too hard to seem young? I don't know. But she's just herself. And she looks at you like you hung the moon." A ridiculous grin spread across my face. Yeah, doofus." Lily bumped my shoulder with hers. "Just be careful, okay? Not because of her, but because of everyone else. The world can be nasty about things they don't understand." I thought about Diane Wheeler, about the whispers at the block party, about the barista at my regular coffee shop who had recently started asking pointed questions about my mother who'd been visiting. "We're handling it," I said, more confidently than I felt. The true test came the following weekend at my boss Garrett's annual company barbecue. I'd been working remotely for Pinnacle Media for nearly a year, but had only met most of my colleagues in person a handful of times at these obligatory social functions. Bringing Alina meant something an official acknowledgement that we were more than neighbors, more than friends. "We don't have to go," I told her the night before as we lay in her bed, watching an old Hitchcock film. "I can say you're not feeling well." Alina propped herself up on one elbow, fixing me with a look I'd come to recognize as her not tolerating nonsense expression. "Mason Bennett, are you ashamed to be seen with me?" "God, no," I said immediately. "The opposite. I'm worried about how they'll treat you." Her expression softened. "I've been navigating judgmental people since before you were born, darling. I can handle a few graphic designers with ironic t-shirts." I laughed, despite my anxiety. "It's not just designers. There's the marketing team. They're brutal, terrifying." She deadpanned, settling back against the pillows. "I've only stared down museum board members and negotiated with temperamental artists whose egos are larger than their talent. How will I ever cope with marketers?" Confidence was contagious. The next day, as we drove to Garrett's sprawling suburban home, I found myself less concerned with potential judgment and more focused on the woman beside me. Elegant in a simple sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders, Garrett greeted us at the door, craft beer in hand. "Mason, finally. Escaped your hermit cave." His eyes flickered to Alina, curious but professional. "And you brought a guest, Lena Kaplan." She introduced herself, extending her hand. "Curator at the Westbrook Modern." Mason's neighbor turned. Significant distraction. I nearly choked on air at her bold self-description, but Garrett just laughed, instantly charmed. "Well, he needs distracting.
I'll work."
And no play makes Mason a dull designer. Come in.
Bart."
On the patio, food's everywhere." The initial introductions went smoother than I'd anticipated. My colleagues were creative types used to unconventional relationships, and Elena's art world connections gave her instant credibility. I began to relax, thinking perhaps I'd overestimated the potential for awkwardness. Then I spotted Valerie, from the marketing team cornering Alina by the drink table, while her husband Ryan, a notorious office gossip, hovered nearby, poorly disguising his eavesdropping. I made my way over just in time to hear Valerie ask, "So, was it love at first sight? Or did you have to work on Mason a bit? I mean, you must have quite the technique." The implication in her voice made my stomach clench, but Alina merely smiled, swirling her wine thoughtfully. "Actually, I think it was the grocery bags that did it. Nothing quite as seductive as a woman who overcommits at Whole Foods." Her response, light but pointed, made Valerie blink in confusion. "The chemistry was immediate," I added, sliding my arm around Elena's waist. "Turns out, when you connect with someone on a fundamental level, Other details become irrelevant. Valerie's expression soured slightly. Well, it's certainly brave. My aunt dated a younger man after her divorce. It was quite the scandal. In our family, how fascinating. Alina replied with exaggerated interest. And how did it end? Badly, Valerie said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. He left her for someone his own age once the novelty wore off. Alina nodded sagely. Sounds like your aunt dodged a bullet, finding out his character so clearly, wouldn't you say? I bit back a laugh as Valerie's smug expression faltered. Alina took my hand, squeezing it gently. Mason, didn't you mention wanting to see Garrett's vinyl collection? I'd love to take a look. As we walked away, I whispered, There is no vinyl collection. I know, she murmured back. But it got us away without causing a scene. Later, as we mingled with colleagues whose names I struggled to remember, I noticed how effortlessly Alina navigated the subtle and not-so-subtle questions about our relationship. She was neither defensive nor apologetic, treating our connection as the most natural thing in the world until others began to see it that way too. On the drive home, streetlights casting rhythmic patterns across her face, I said, You were amazing. Tonight, Alina smiled, her eyes on the road. It wasn't so terrible. Your boss is lovely. That Valerie needs a hobby. I'm serious, I persisted. The way you handled everything. I've never seen anything like it. Experience has its uses, she said lightly. Then more seriously, when you've lived long enough, you realize most people's judgments say more about them than about you? Their discomfort isn't our problem to solve. I reached across the console to take her hand. When did you get so wise? Around 43, she laughed. Something clicked. Suddenly I cared much less about fitting into boxes other people had constructed. It was liberating. I thought about that often in the weeks that followed the freedom that came with authenticity. With refusing to apologize for choices that brought joy. As summer faded into early fall, Alina and I settled into a rhythm that felt increasingly permanent. My lease was up for renewal in October, and though neither of us had spoken directly about moving in together, I found myself letting mail pile up at my house while my clothes migrated piece by piece to her dresser drawers. One evening in late September, I was working at Elena's dining table when my phone rang. The screen displayed Mom, and I felt the familiar twist of guilt for how long it had been since our last conversation. Hey, Mom, I answered, keeping my voice casual. Mason James Bennett, my mother's voice was sharp with worry. Are you alive? Your father and I have been concerned. I winced. Sorry, work's been crazy. How are things in Ohio? How are things in Ohio, my young man? Lily told us about your situation. My stomach dropped. My situation, Alina looked up from her book, eyebrows raised in question. I mouthed my mom, and she nodded, rising quietly to give me privacy. I shook my head, not wanting her to leave, but she just squeezed my shoulder and slipped into the kitchen. With that older woman, my mother continued, Your neighbor? What are you thinking? She's older than I am. The accusation in her voice made my defenses rise immediately. Her name is Alina, Mom. And what I'm thinking is that I've found someone extraordinary who happens to be older than me. Happens to be. My mother's laugh was brittle. 25 years isn't a happens to be. It's a generational gap. Could you possibly have in common? I thought about our late-night conversations about art and design, our shared love of old films, the way Alina challenged my thinking while supporting my ambitions. Everything that matters, I said firmly. Oh, honey, her voice softened with what sounded horribly like pity. I'm sure she's lovely. But there's a reason these relationships rarely work. You're at completely different life stages. When you're 40, she'll be 60. When you're 50, I know how math works, Mom, I interrupted. I'm not planning our retirement communities yet. We're happy now. That's enough, is it? What about children? Have you thought about that? Question hit like a physical blow. Alina and I hadn't discussed children. At 27, it seemed like a distant concern, something to consider. Someday? But my mother's words forced the issue into sharp focus. Not every relationship needs to follow the same timeline, Mom, I said, aware I was dodging the question. Look, I appreciate your concern, but this is my life. I'm not asking for permission. But the conversation deteriorated from their ending. With strained I love yous and a promise to call more regularly that we both knew I might not keep. When I hung up, Elena was leaning in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed protectively over her chest. That sounded fun, she said lightly, but her eyes were serious. Sorry you had to hear that, I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Your mother's concerns aren't unreasonable, Elena said carefully, coming to sit beside me. She loves you. She wants your life to be easy. Easy is overrated. Is it? Elena's gaze was steady. Mason, we've been in this beautiful bubble all summer, but your mother's right about one thing we haven't really talked about: the future. My throat tightened. Do we need to? Can't we just see where it goes? Elena finished. That's fine for now. But eventually we'll need to address the realities. Like kids, I said, the word hanging between us. Elena nodded slowly. Like kids. I had that conversation with myself years ago. Decided I was okay without them. But you're 27. You shouldn't make that decision because of me. I don't even know if I want children, I protested. Plenty of people don't. True, she conceded. But plenty of people change their minds too. She took my hands in hers. I just don't. Want you to wake up at 40 resenting choices you made at 27 because you were in love? The word love settled between us, acknowledged for the first time. Despite the serious conversation, I felt a surge of joy. So that's what this is, I asked softly. Love? Elena's smile was gentle but sad. For me, yes. Which is why I need you to really think about what you want your life to look like in 10 years, in 20. Because I care too much about you to let you sacrifice things you might not even know you want yet. I pulled her close, burying my face in her hair that smelled of jasmine and possibilities. I know what I want right now, I whispered. The rest we'll figure out together. She held me tightly, and I felt her nod against my shoulder. But something had shifted, a question introduced that couldn't be unasked. The next morning, Elena left early for the museum, pressing a quick kiss to my forehead before slipping out. I stayed in her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about futures and choices and the weight of time. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss. Meeting with Westbrook Museum tomorrow. Potential new client. You in? I sat bolt upright. Westbrook was Elena's museum. This couldn't be coincidence. I called Garrett immediately. The Westbrook meeting, was this Elena's doing? Good morning to you too, he drawled. And yes, your significantly distracting neighbor made the introduction. Said our aesthetic would be perfect for their new digital initiative. I assumed you knew. I didn't, I said, feelings mixed. On one hand, I was touched that Elena believed in my work enough to recommend Pinnacle. On the other, I'd always been fiercely independent, determined to succeed on my own merits. Look, Garrett continued, normally I'd be hesitant about mixing business and whatever you two have going on. But this is a major opportunity. Their digital presence needs a complete overhaul, and their budget is substantial. If you're uncomfortable, I can put someone else on it. Pride warred with practicality. This was exactly the kind of project that could advance my career, allow me to build a portfolio of cultural institution work that might eventually let me go freelance. No, I decided. I want it. I'll be professional. Good, Garrett sounded. Relieved. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Or something that doesn't scream? I sleep with the curator. I laughed, despite myself, noted. That evening, when Elena returned home, and I realized I'd begun thinking of her house, as home I was waiting with dinner, prepared and questions ready. You could have told me about Westbrook, I said as we sat at her dining table, candles. Lit more for the conversation than romance. Elena set down her fork. I wanted it to be a surprise. The digital director was asking for recommendations, and your work is exceptional. It seemed like a perfect match. I appreciate the vote of confidence, I said carefully. But I've always made it on my own. No connections, no shortcuts. Her eyes flashed. This isn't a shortcut, Mason. It's an introduction. Your work will speak for itself. It's just open a door. You still have to walk through it. Let's put it that way. It made sense. Still, something nagged at me. What happens if things change between us? Would it affect the project? Elena's expression became very still. Are you planning on things changing? No, But after our conversation last night, I'm trying to think practically. How responsible of you, she said, a slight edge to her voice. To be clear, my professional reputation means everything to me. I recommended Pinnacle because they're excellent, and you happen to be their most innovative designer. If our personal relationship changed, it wouldn't affect my professional assessment. I reached for her hand. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to imply otherwise. This is all new territory for me. Her expression softened. For me to believe it or not, I've never dated a colleague before. I'm not exactly a colleague, I pointed out. Close enough to make it complicated, she sighed. Maybe this was a mistake? The recommendation? Or us? The question hung in the air, heavier than I'd intended. Elena's eyes met mine, vulnerable in a way I rarely saw. Neither she said finally. But both require care and attention. The Westbrook meeting the next day was surreal. Elena maintained absolute professionalism, introducing me to her colleagues as Mr. Bennett from Pinnacle Media. Without a hint that we'd woken up in the same bed that morning, I followed her lead, presenting our portfolio with confidence, while keeping my gaze from lingering on her too long. Afterward, the digital director, a woman named Imani with bright blue braids and sharp eyes, pulled me aside. Elena speaks highly of your work, she said. Very highly.
I nodded.
Unsure where this was going. I'm glad to hear that, Imani studied me for a moment. The museum world is small and chatty, Mr. Bennett. Elena is respected and valued here. I hope Pinnacle understands what an opportunity this is. The subtext was clear. Don't hurt her professionally or personally. We do, I assured her. I do. Imani nodded once, apparently satisfied. Good, because this project could be career-defining for the right designer. As fall deepened, painting Riverdale in fiery colors, Elena and I found our rhythm again. The Westbrook project gave me a newfound confidence at work. Elena's latest exhibition was receiving national attention. We spent weekends exploring small towns within driving distance, discovering antique shops and hole-in-a-wall restaurants where no one knew us or cared about our age difference. One crisp October evening, as we walked along the river path near Elena's house, leaves crunching beneath our feet, she said casually, "Your lease is up soon, isn't it?" My heart stuttered. "Next week, actually," she prompted when I didn't continue. I stopped walking, turning to face her. The setting sun gilded her hair, making the silver strands gleam like precious metal. And I've been thinking about what happens next. Elena's expression remained neutral, but I saw the pulse jump in her throat. What have you been thinking? I took a deep breath. That I spend most nights at your place anyway. That my house feels less like home than your guest bathroom. Maybe it makes sense to make this official. Official, she repeated, the word careful on her tongue. You mean move in together? Yes, I said, suddenly certain. If you want that too. Elena looked out over the water, silent for long enough that anxiety began to curl in my stomach. Finally, she turned back to me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Mason, she said softly, I need to tell you something first. Last week, I got a call from my doctor, Elena said, her voice steady, despite the tears gathering in her eyes. The biopsy results came back. It's breast cancer. The world tilted sideways. River, trees, setting sun, everything blurred except Elena's face, which remained in perfect, terrible focus. Cancer, I repeated stupidly, as if saying it might change its meaning. She nodded, reaching for my hands. Hers were cold, despite the mild evening. Stage 2. Treatable, with a good prognosis. But it means surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, a year of my life at minimum. My mind raced to process this information to find the right response. What I said was, when were you going to tell me? A flash of hurt crossed her face. Telling you now. I needed time to understand it myself before I shared it. Shame flooded me immediately. I'm sorry. That was selfish. God, Elena. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as if I could somehow absorb the diagnosis through our shared warmth. What do you need? What can I do? She leaned into me for a moment, then straightened, wiping her eyes with practiced dignity. That's why I hesitated when you mentioned moving in. This changes things, Mason. The next year won't be pretty. I'll be sick, exhausted, probably not the best company. You should think carefully about what you're signing up for. I stared at her incredulous. You think this changes my feelings? That I'd walk away because things got hard? Not because... You don't care, she said gently. But you're 27. You should be building your career, traveling, living, not playing nurse to a middle-aged woman with cancer. Anger flared, surprising us both. Stop it. Stop acting like my age makes me incapable of commitment or depth. I love you, Elena. Cancer doesn't change that. It was the first time I'd said those words aloud, and they hung in the autumn air. Between us, powerful and irrevocable. Elena's breath caught. Mason, no, I interrupted. I love you. Want to be with you through this and whatever comes after. Not out of duty or pity, but because my life is better with you in it, no matter what we're facing. She studied my face for a long moment, searching for hesitation or insincerity. Finding none, she nodded once. Decision made. Okay, she whispered. Okay, move in with me. Be with me through this. But promise me one thing. Anything. If it becomes too much, if you need an exit tool, tell me honestly. No martyrdom. No sacrificing your happiness out of obligation. I wanted to argue, to insist I would never need an exit, but I recognized the importance of her condition. I promise. But the same goes for you. If you need space, or if having me around makes things harder, you have to tell me. She smiled then, a genuine smile that reached her eyes despite the tears. Deal. She sealed it with a kiss that tasted of salt and autumn and possibilities not yet foreclosed. 3 days later, I moved the last of my essential belongings into Elena's craftsman bungalow. My landlord was understanding about breaking the lease, especially once I explained the circumstances in vague terms. I kept a storage unit for furniture and items I couldn't bear to part with, but that had no place in Elena's carefully curated home. The first weeks of our new reality were consumed by medical appointments, consultations with surgeons and oncologists, second opinions, treatment plans laid out in clinical language that felt disconnected from the vibrant woman sitting beside me, taking meticulous notes. Bilateral mastectomy, the surgical oncologist explained, pointing to images on his computer screen, followed by 6 rounds of chemotherapy, then radiation. It's aggressive, but your cancer type responds well to this approach. Elena nodded, asking insightful questions about recovery times and success rates. I sat beside her, trying to project calm support while internally reeling from terms like necrotic tissue and lymph node dissection. In the car afterward, Elena finally let the composed facade crack. I'm going to lose my breasts, she said. Flatly, my hair, possibly my sense of taste, my energy, Not forever, I said, reaching for her hand across the console. Long enough, she stared out the window. Long enough that it all feels like a cruel joke. Just when I found you, when I was feeling more alive and desirable than I had in years, my body betrays me. Your body is fighting, I corrected gently, and we're fighting with it, together. She squeezed my hand but said nothing more, lost in thoughts I couldn't fully share. Surgery was scheduled for November 15th. The weeks leading up to it settled into a strangely normal rhythm. Elena continued working at the museum, determined to finish installing her winter exhibition before her medical leave began. I split my time between the Westbrook project and transforming the guest room into a recovery space, researching the best pillows for post-mastectomy comfort and installing handrails in the shower. Friends and colleagues rallied around us in ways that both touched and overwhelmed Elena. Her museum staff organized a meal train. My sister sent care packages with soft pajamas and premium streaming subscriptions. Even Diane Wheeler, upon hearing the news, appeared on our doorstep with a casserole and an awkward but seemingly genuine offer of help. Cancer trumps gossip, Elena observed wryly after Diane left. Apparently my stock has risen from neighborhood cougar to brave survivor overnight. I laughed despite myself. Your talent for categorizing social dynamics is unmatched. Curator's eye, she winked. Then more seriously, I'm glad people know. I was dreading the explanations when I start looking different. The implication hung in the air. Elena's appearance would change her body, her hair, perhaps even the vibrant energy that animated her features. I found myself studying her more intently in quiet moments, memorizing the curve of her breast, the particular silver pattern in her dark hair, storing these images like treasures. She caught me watching her one evening as she emerged from the shower, a towel wrapped around her body. Taking mental photographs, I nodded, not bothering to deny it. Is that okay? Elena let the towel drop, standing before me naked and unguarded. Take all the pictures you need, she said softly. Just promise you'll take new ones afterward, too. I crossed the room and knelt before her, pressing my forehead against her stomach, arms encircling her waist. Every day, I promised. Version of you. The night before surgery, neither of us slept much. We lay facing each other in the darkness, hands intertwined between us. I'm scared, Elena admitted, voice small in a way I'd never heard before. Me too, I confessed. But you know what scares me more? The thought of not having met you? Missing this, missing us because I was afraid of what other people might think, or how hard it might be. She was quiet for so long, I thought she might have fallen asleep, and she whispered, when I was diagnosed, my first thought wasn't about dying, it was that I wouldn't get enough time with you. I kissed her then, trying to pour everything I couldn't articulate into that connection, every promise, every hope, every moment of gratitude for finding her across torn grocery bags and shared wine. The hospital was a maze of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Elena, in her surgical gown, looked smaller somehow, though her expression remained determined. Remember, she told me as the nurse prepared to take her to the operating room, no matter what happens in there, I'm still me. Whatever they take, they don't get to take that. I held her hand until the last possible moment. I'll be right here. I know, she smiled. That's what makes this bearable. Surgery took 6 hours. I paced the waiting room, attempted to work on my laptop, abandoned it to stare blankly at ceiling tiles. Lily called twice. My mother wants our relationship still strained but softening in the face of Elena's diagnosis. Garrett texted to say he'd extended the Westbrook deadline. No explanation needed. Finally, the surgeon appeared, still in his scrubs. She did great, he said, and the breath I'd been holding for hours released in a rush. Clean margins, minimal lymph node involvement. She's in recovery now. Relief made me lightheaded. When can I see her? About 30 minutes.
She's
still coming out of anesthesia, but she asked for you. Lena was pale against the white hospital sheets, IV lines snaking from her arms. Drainage tubes emerging from beneath her bandaged chest. But her eyes, when they found mine, were clear and present. Hey, handsome, she rasped, voice rough from the intubation tube. I leaned down to kiss her forehead, careful of the various tubes and wires. Hey, warrior, how do you feel? Like I've been hit by a truck driven by an angry bear. Her attempt at a smile was more grimace than grin. Did they get it all? Surgeon says it went perfectly. Clean margins. She closed, her eyes briefly, relief washing over her features. Good. That's good. Recovery was harder than either of us had anticipated. The physical pain Elena endured was visible in the tightness around her eyes, the careful way she moved. What I hadn't expected was her fierce independence, her resistance to accepting help even when she clearly needed it. I can do it myself, she insisted the third day home. Struggling to reach a glass in the kitchen cabinet, her range of motion severely limited by the surgery. I know you can, I said carefully, but you don't have to. That's why I'm here. She slumped against the counter, frustration and pain etched in the lines of her face. I hate this. I hate feeling weak. I hate that you're seeing me like this. I moved to stand before her, not touching, just present. What I see is the strongest person I know, fighting one of the hardest battles anyone can face. There's nothing weak about that. A tear slipped down her cheek. I want to believe that, and borrow my belief until yours returns, I said simply. And let me get the damn glass. That breakthrough, small as it was, marked a turning point. Elena began to accept help not just from me, but from her friends, colleagues. Even my sister, who flew in for a weekend to give me a brief respite. By December, the surgical wounds had healed enough for Elena to begin chemotherapy. The oncologist had prepared us for the side effects: nausea, fatigue, hair loss, but the reality was still shocking. After the first treatment, Elena spent 2 days alternating between the bathroom floor and the bed, her body rebelling against the very medicine meant to save it. "Go to work," she urged between bouts of sickness. "There's nothing you can do here except watch me throw up." "I can hold your hair," I said, trying for levity. The joke backfired when a week later, Elena's hair began coming out in clumps. She found me in the home office, staring at her hand full of dark strands, eyes wide with a grief I couldn't fully comprehend. "It's starting," she said unnecessarily. That evening I set up a chair in the bathroom, lined the floor with towels, and brought in Elena's favorite jazz playlist. She sat rigid with tension as I carefully, lovingly shaved her head. "I can't look," she whispered when it was done, refusing to face the mirror. "You don't have to yet," I assured her. "But when you're ready, I think you'll be surprised." 2 days later, Elena finally gathered the courage to really look at her reflection. I found her in the bathroom, staring at herself, hands tracing the smooth curve of her scalp. "I look like an alien," she said when she noticed me watching. I moved to stand behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. I was thinking more like a warrior queen or a very sexy Buddhist monk. A surprised laugh escaped her. "Sexy monk. That's the best you could come up with?" I wrapped my arms around her waist, careful to avoid her still tender chest. "Give me time. I'm working on a comprehensive list of bald-headed compliments." She leaned back against me, a reflection a study in contrasts, her slight frame against my taller one, her smooth head beside my tousled hair. "This isn't what you signed up for," she said softly. "No," I agreed. "It's so much more." I turned, her gently to face me. "Every day with you, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones, teaches me something about courage, about what matters, about who I want to be." Elena searched my face. "And who is that? Someone worthy of standing beside you through anything?" "Someone who chooses love over fear, every time." Christmas arrived with a light dusting of snow, usual for our region. Elena was between chemo treatments and feeling relatively strong, enough that we decided to host a small gathering. Lily and her fiancé, a few of Elena's museum colleagues, my boss Garrett and his husband, a deliberate family of choice to mark our first holiday. Together, Elena wore a silk scarf wrapped elegantly around her head, emerald green to match her eyes. She moved through the party with a grace that belied the exhaustion I knew she felt, accepting compliments on the decorations, deflecting concerned questions about her health with practiced ease. "You've created a beautiful home," Lily told us, helping in the kitchen while Elena rested briefly on the sofa. "Both of you together." I glanced through the doorway at Elena, her eyes closed, hand resting lightly on Java the cat, who had become her constant companion during recovery. "It's all her. I just moved in." Lily bumped my shoulder. "That's not what I see. The Elena I met last summer would never have allowed those ridiculous sci-fi posters in the study, or kept a Star Wars mug collection in the open shelving." I hadn't really noticed the gradual integration of my belongings, my tastes, into Elena's carefully curated space. But Lily was right. The house had evolved to reflect both of us.
Oh.
"She's letting you in," my sister continued. "Really in. That's rare and precious, especially when someone's going through something like this." Later, after our guests had departed, and we sat beside the Christmas tree with its twinkling lights, I mentioned Lily's observation. Elena smiled. "She's perceptive, your sister. It took cancer for me to realize how many walls I'd built in this house, in my life, keeping things perfect, controlled." She gestured to the room around us, where evidence of my presence was indeed scattered among her more refined belongings. "This is better. Messy, but real. Like us," I suggested. "Exactly like us." She leaned against me, her body warm and solid despite all it had endured. "I used to think the worst thing about aging was watching your body betray you. I think it might be the opposite. The tragedy would be never letting yourself be truly known, truly loved, because you were afraid of being vulnerable." I thought about the Elena I'd first met, composed and self-contained, and the woman beside me now, still proud and strong, but open in ways that took my breath away. "When all this is over," I said carefully, "what do you want?" "For us, I mean." Elena was quiet for a long moment, the Christmas lights casting colored patterns across her silk-covered head. I want mornings with you, afternoons, evenings. I want to argue about art and where to vacation and whose turn it is to clean the coffee maker. I want to watch you grow into the extraordinary man you're becoming, and I want to grow alongside you, even though I'll always be 25 years older, she finished for me. Even though people will always look twice, always have opinions, even though there are no guarantees for anyone, but especially not for someone who's had cancer. I took her hand, our fingers intertwining with the familiarity of practice. Sounds perfect to me. January brought Elena's last chemotherapy treatment, marked by a small bell-ringing ceremony at the oncology center. February began radiation, less immediately debilitating but cumulative in its effects. Through it all, we established new rhythms work. When energy allowed, rest without apology when it didn't. Celebrations for small victories like Elena's hair beginning to grow back in a soft silver fuzz, or her first day returning to the museum, even if only for a few hours. My Westbrook project launched to critical acclaim, earning me a promotion. At Pinnacle, Elena's winter exhibition received a prestigious national award, which she accepted wearing a hand-painted silk head wrap and standing tall, despite the fatigue that I knew plagued her. By March, as the first crocuses pushed through the soil in Elena's garden, we began to speak of the future without the shadow of treatment hanging over every plan. Her prognosis remained excellent, though follow-up appointments and medications would be part of our lives for years to come. One evening, as we sat on the porch swing watching spring rain patter against new leaves, Nina said suddenly, "I've been thinking about taking a sabbatical." I turned to look at her, surprised. From the museum? For how long? 6 months. Maybe a year. She looked almost shy, unusual for her. I want to write that book on female artists I've been talking about for a decade, and I want to travel, not museum trips or conferences, real travel, with time to explore. Hope fluttered in my chest. Where would you want to go? Everywhere. Her eyes lit with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen since before her diagnosis. Japan during cherry blossom season, the Greek islands, the hill towns of Italy. Sounds amazing, I said, already imagining Elena among ancient ruins. Her camera capturing architectural details, her sketchbook filling with observations. She hesitated, then asked carefully, "Would you want to come?" "I know you have your career, your life here." "I wouldn't expect yes," I interrupted. "Absolutely yes. You don't need to decide right now," she cautioned. "Think about what it would mean for your work." Your eye silenced her with a kiss. Elena Kaplan, if cancer taught us anything, it's that life doesn't wait for perfect timing. I can work remotely from anywhere with decent internet. Pinnacle would accommodate a partial schedule. Frankly, watching you battle through this year has changed my priorities pretty dramatically. She studied my face. How so, I've realized. Success means nothing without someone to share it with. That no project deadline or client meeting will ever matter as much as being present for the people I love. I took her hands in mine. I choose you, Elena. I choose us. Everything else is negotiable. Tears gathered in her eyes. I never expected this, never thought I would find someone willing to build a life around mutual dreams, rather than conventional expectations. Conventional is overrated, I shrugged, echoing words she had said to me months ago. And you taught me that sometimes the most beautiful things come from unexpected places, like grocery bags with structural flaws. She laughed, the sound ringing clear and true in the spring evening. Who knew Whole Foods paper bags were such powerful matchmakers? I think it was the wine that sealed the deal, I teased. Elena's expression turned serious again. I love you, Mason Bennett. Through cancer and recovery, and whatever comes next. I love your kindness, your talent, your willingness to see beyond surfaces and numbers to what really matters. And I love you, I replied, drawing her close. Your strength, your wisdom, your ability to make every space, especially the space in my heart, more beautiful. As we sat together watching darkness settle over the garden where new growth pushed through the soil with quiet determination, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The whispered invitation that had changed everything. Stay, I have wine. The courage it had taken for both of us to keep choosing each other despite judgment, despite illness, despite an uncertain future. Some would call it an unlikely love story. I preferred to think of it as inevitable to souls recognizing each other across boundaries of age and circumstance, creating something rare and precious together. Spring rain continued to fall gently around us, nourishing the garden, washing the world clean, promising renewal. 1 year after Elena's diagnosis, we stood together in the garden behind the craftsman bungalow, surrounded by friends and family who had weathered the storm with us. The autumn air carried the scent of chrysanthemums and wood smoke, and fairy lights twinkled in the trees overhead. Elena wore a simple ivory dress that complemented her new silver-white pixie cut her post-chemo hair had grown back. Completely different, a transformation she had come to embrace as symbolic of her journey. To life, Elena raised her glass, her voice strong and clear, no longer shadowed by the exhaustion of treatment. To second chances and unexpected blessings, Lena called Amani from the museum, her blue braids now streaked with pink. The most stubborn survivor I know. To both of you, added Lily, standing with her new husband near the dessert table, for showing us what real partnership looks like. Glasses clinked, conversation flowed, and I found myself watching. Elena moved through the crowd, touching shoulders, laughing, genuinely fully present in a way that still amazed me after everything her body had endured. When our eyes met across the garden, her smile was just for me, intimate and full of promises kept. Later, as we cleared away the last of the celebration, Elena leaned against the kitchen counter, contemplative. "A year ago, I was not sure I would be standing here," she admitted. "Not just because of the cancer, but because I was afraid my diagnosis would be too much for us for you to bear." I set down the plates I was carrying and moved to stand before her. And now, she reached up to trace my face with gentle fingers. "Now I understand that loving someone is not about waiting for perfect conditions. It is about choosing each other through whatever comes, even when what comes is a middle-aged woman. With cancer," I teased gently, "even when what comes is a stubborn young man who refuses to make sensible choices," she countered, eyes sparkling. I captured her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. Best insensible choice I ever made. 2 weeks later, we boarded a plane to Tokyo, the first stop on Elena's sabbatical journey. Her book Advance from the University Press had come through, providing additional funding for our travels. Pinnacle had approved my remote work arrangement, with surprisingly little resistance, especially after the success of the Westbrook project. It brought in several new cultural clients. Cherry blossom season was still months away, but autumn in Japan held its own magic temples. Surrounded by fiery maple trees, gardens cultivated for fall colors. The particular quality of light that made every photograph Elena took seemed infused with gold. We settled into a small apartment in a quiet Tokyo neighborhood, establishing a rhythm that would serve us through the coming months of travel. Mornings were for work, Elena writing her manuscript, me handling remote design projects. Afternoons were for exploration, neighborhoods, museums, hidden gardens discovered through Elena's network of art world connections. In Kyoto, we met an elderly ceramics master who invited us to his studio after learning of Elena's cancer journey. As we sat on tatami mats, watching his gnarled hands shape clay with astonishing precision, he spoke through a translator about the Japanese concept of kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold highlighting rather than hiding the damage. "The piece becomes more beautiful for having been broken," the translator explained as the master demonstrated carefully joining two fragments with a gold-dusted lacquer. The repair is not disguised but celebrated as part of the object's history. That evening in our ryokan room, with its view of a small stone garden, Elena stood before the mirror, her evening routine of medications laid out on the low table beside her. She traced the still visible scars on her chest, visible in the neckline of her silk robe. "Kintsugi," she said softly. "I think I understand it better now."
Ow.
I moved to stand behind her, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "The most beautiful things are not perfect. They are authentic." She leaned back against me, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Do you ever wonder if we would have found each other without the grocery bags? Without that particular moment of vulnerability?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "I'd like to think we were inevitable, that somehow we would have recognized each other no matter the circumstances." Her smile was reflective. "My grandmother used to say that love finds a way through the smallest cracks in our defenses." I never fully believed her until you. From Japan, we traveled to Thailand, where Elena's research took us to remote temples with forgotten female artworks that had never been properly documented. I watched her historian's mind at work, meticulous and passionate, recording discoveries that would form a chapter in her book. In a small village near Chiang Mai, we stayed with a family of weavers, whose matriarch, a woman in her 90s, took a particular interest in Elena. Despite the language barrier, they communicated through gesture and expression, the older woman demonstrating ancient techniques on a wooden loom that had been in her family for generations. She asked how long we have been married. Our guide translated one evening as we shared a meal with the family. I started to correct the assumption, but Elena laid a hand on my arm. "Tell her 7 months," she said. In our hearts, if not on paper, the answer seemed to please the elderly weaver, who nodded sagely and spoke at length to our guide. She says, "Love that grows through illness has strong roots," the guide translated, "like bamboo that bends in the storm but does not break." Later that night, beneath a ceiling fan that stirred the warm air in our simple room, Elena turned to me. "Would you want that?" Marriage. The question caught me off guard. We had not discussed formal commitment, focusing instead on recovery and rebuilding. "Are you proposing to me, Elena Kaplan?" She laughed softly. "I am asking if it is something that matters to you. I have done the traditional route before: white dress church, distant relatives getting drunk at the reception. I do not need that again. But if it is important to you..." I considered the question seriously. "What matters to me is that we are together. The rest is just details." Elena studied me in the dim light. "But if you could design it, our commitment, what would it look like?" "Something simple," I said after a moment. "Something true to us. Not a traditional ceremony, but a real promise witnessed by people who understand what we have built together." She nodded slowly. "I would like that. Not here, not now, but someday. When we are ready." The conversation lingered with me as we continued our journey. In Greece, wandering among ancient ruins where female deities had once been worshipped, I found myself thinking about permanence and change, how some structures withstand centuries while others crumble, how love can be both enduring and evolving. Elena's book research flourished amid the Mediterranean light. She interviewed female artists on remote islands, documented forgotten works in small museums, and filled notebooks with observations about art created by women throughout history. At night, we sat on balconies overlooking the sea, her reading passages aloud while I sketched concepts for the book's design. "Listen to this," she said one evening on Santorini, the sunset turning the white buildings golden around us. "Women's art has always existed in the spaces between domestic and public, between tradition and innovation, between restriction and freedom. It is art made, not despite limitations, but through them, finding voice in the very constraints meant to silence." "Your voice," I observed, looking up from my sketch. She nodded, a hint of wonder in her expression. "Cancer gave me this book, in a strange way. It's a sabbatical, the perspective, the urgency to say what matters while I can." "From the spaces between," I echoed. "Exactly." Her eyes met mine across the small table. "Like us, we exist in the space between conventional categories. Too old, too young, wrong timing, perfect timing. And yet here we are." I gestured to the breathtaking view, the wine between us, the life we were creating together. "Here we are," she agreed, reaching for my hand. In Italy, 3 months into our journey, Elena received an email that changed our trajectory. A prestigious gallery in New York was mounting a major exhibition on female artists across centuries and wanted her as guest curator, a role that would amplify her book's message and place her at the center of an important cultural conversation. "It's an incredible opportunity," she said, showing me the details. "But it would mean cutting our travels short, returning to the States by summer." I studied her face, seeing the excitement she was trying to temper for my benefit. "Then we go back. The world will still be here for future adventures. You wouldn't mind?" "Elena," I said gently, "watching you reclaim your professional passion after everything you've been through. That's the whole point. Of course we go." Relief and gratitude washed over her features. "What about you? Your remote arrangement with Pinnacle?" "Actually," I said, An idea that had been forming for months, finally crystallizing. I've been thinking it might be time for a change. Elena's eyebrows rose. What kind of change? Going independent? Starting my own design studio? Focusing on cultural institutions, museums, artists, the clients I care about most? That's a big step, she said carefully. Are you sure? I nodded, surprisingly certain. The Westbrook project opened doors. I've had 3 museums reach out directly while we've been traveling. Being with you through cancer taught me something. Important about time it's too precious to spend on work that doesn't feed your soul. Elena was quiet for a moment, then smiled slowly. Mason Bennett, independent design entrepreneur. I like it. I thought you might. I grinned. Especially since I'll need a cultural consultant with impeccable credentials. We spent our last weeks abroad planning for this new chapter, Elena outlining her curatorial vision, me sketching concepts for my fledgling studio, both of us researching where to base ourselves upon return. New York made sense for Elena's exhibition. But the thought of leaving Riverdale, the community that had supported us through her illness, gave us pause. What about splitting time? Suggested as we sat in a Roman piazza, spring sunshine warming the ancient stones around us. Keep the bungalow, but get a small place in New York for exhibition weeks? Bi-coastal before we're even married? Elena teased. Very cosmopolitan of us. The casual reference to marriage sent a pleasant shock through me. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't even a plan. But it acknowledged a future where such commitment remained possible, desirable. Our return to Riverdale in late April coincided with the full bloom of Elena's garden. The craftsman bungalow welcomed us back. Java the cat, greeting us with injured dignity that quickly dissolved into purring affection. Stepping through the door felt like closing a circle we had left as survivors, turned as explorers, bringing back experiences that had transformed us both. Diane Wheeler spotted us unpacking the car and hurried over, her curiosity barely disguised as neighborly concern. "You're back," she exclaimed. "We thought you might have moved away permanently. It's just a working sabbatical," Elena explained. Smoothly, research for my book. Diane's gaze darted between us, searching for signs of discord or drama to report. Finding none, she settled for, "Well, you're looking wonderful, Elena. Travel clearly agrees with you. And Mason's such a devoted partner to accompany her through everything." I bit back a smile at her thinly veiled fishing. "We're devoted to each other," I corrected gently. "That's what partnership means." After she left, Elena burst into laughter. Poor Diane. We've given her so little to work with. No dramatic breakup, no age gap crisis, not even a proper scandal to report at her book club. Just 2 people who love each other building a life together, I agreed. How disappointingly. Ordinary Elena's exhibition preparation consumed the summer months. We established a rhythm of 2 weeks in New York, 1 week in Riverdale, maximizing productivity while maintaining connection to the home that had sheltered us through the hardest year of our lives. My independent design studio named Confluence. To reflect the meeting point of art and technology, launched with the Westbrook Museum as its first official client, Garrett, understanding and supportive, even referred several pinnacle projects my way when they aligned with my new focus. "You're making it look easy," he told me over drinks during one of our New York stays. The career pivot, the relationship, all of it. I laughed. Trust me, none of it has been easy. But the right path rarely is. "And you're sure this is the right path?" he asked, not unkindly. "The age difference, the health concerns, the complications, it's a lot for someone your age to take on." I considered his question seriously, knowing it came from genuine care. "What would be harder," I said finally, "would be walking away from the person who makes me most myself. Age, health, logistics, those are just circumstances. Lena is my choice." Garrett studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I've never seen you so certain about anything. It's a good look on you." As Elena's exhibition opening approached, our lives accelerated to a dizzying pace. Her medical follow-ups remained clear, each one a quiet victory we celebrated with increasing confidence. My client list grew, allowing me to be selective about projects in a way I'd never imagined possible so early in my career. One evening, in late September, as we sat on the bungalow's porch enjoying a rare quiet moment, Lena said, I've been thinking about what comes after the exhibition. The book publication, I guessed. Her manuscript was nearly complete. The university. Press eager to align its release with the exhibition's success. Beyond that, she clarified, my sabbatical technically ends in December. The museum has been holding my position, but I turned to look at her more directly. But she took a deep breath. I'm considering not going back, at least not. In the same capacity, surprise rendered me momentarily speechless. Elena's curator position had been her identity for so long, the anchor around which her professional life revolved. What would you do instead? I asked finally. Consulting, writing, guest curation, like the New York project. Her eyes held a quiet excitement. Working with smaller institutions that can't afford full-time curators but need expertise. Maybe even teaching. A portfolio career, I suggested, using the term I'd embraced for my own path. Exactly. She smiled, pleased by my understanding. More flexibility, more variety, less security, but more freedom. Freedom for what, Lena's? Expression grew contemplative. For unexpected opportunities. For more travel. For whatever comes next for us. She hesitated, then added softly. For the time we have, however long that might be. The reference to her cancer now in remission but never truly forgotten hung between us. We'd learned to live with that shadow, neither ignoring it nor allowing it to dominate our choices. I think it sounds perfect, I said, reaching for her hand. And very brave. She laughed. Brave or foolish? Most people my age are securing retirement, not reinventing their careers. Most people haven't stared down cancer and emerged stronger, I pointed out. Besides, when have you ever cared about what most people do? Her exhibition opening at the New York Gallery was a triumph beyond even our optimistic expectations. Art critics praised her curatorial vision, highlighting the connections she'd drawn between female artists across centuries and cultures. Museum directors approached her with consulting offers before the evening ended, and Alina gave her curator's talk, standing confident and radiant in a deep blue dress that set off her silver hair. I watched the audience lean forward, captivated, not just by her expertise, but by her hard-won authenticity. My research for this exhibition began during my cancer treatment, she told the crowded gallery, her voice steady. When you face your own mortality, you start asking different questions. About art. Not just who made it or when, but why. What compels someone to create despite obstacles, despite limitation, despite knowing that nothing we make lasts forever? I stood at the back, heart full to bursting with pride and love for this extraordinary woman who had emerged from illness. Not diminished, but expanded. Not fearful, but fierce in her determination to live authentically. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, and Alina accepted final congratulations from colleagues, I noticed her glancing repeatedly toward the gallery entrance. Following her gaze, I spotted two men in their 30s, hesitating just inside the door. Alina excused herself from the museum director she'd been speaking with and moved toward them, her steps faltering slightly. I followed, curious and concerned. Mom, one of the men said as she approached. The exhibition is incredible. Jacob, Elena's voice caught. Michael, you came, her sons. The children who had sided with their father after the divorce, who had been distant and judgmental during her illness, despite my attempts to reach out to them. Now they stood awkwardly in the gallery that celebrated their mother's greatest professional achievement. Tentative but present. Dad told us about it, the younger one, Michael explained. Said we should see it. Elena's composure wavered visibly. He did. Jacob nodded. He regrets how things ended. How he behaved during your treatment. I hung back, giving them space for this reunion, but Alina reached behind her, finding my hand without looking. Shh, drawing me forward, she said. Jacob, Michael, this is Mason, my partner. The introduction was simple, but profound, claiming our relationship before her children, without qualification or apology. We've heard about you, Jacob said, offering his hand. Thank you for being there for her when we weren't. The acknowledgement, unexpected and genuine, brought tears to Elena's eyes. We should talk, she told her sons. Really talk. Tomorrow. Perhaps. They nodded. Arrangements were made. And as they left, Alina leaned against me, emotional exhaustion finally claiming her. You okay? I asked softly. Better than okay, she whispered. Complete. Back at our small New York apartment, Alina slipped out of her exhibition dress, and we prepared for bed. She said, I've been thinking about our conversation in Thailand, about commitment. My heart skipped. What about it? She turned to face me, beautiful in the dim light, her expression both vulnerable and certain. I'm ready, whenever you are. The simplicity of her statement, free of pressure or expectation, filled me with a quiet joy. I've been ready since that first night. With the wine, I admitted, just waiting for the right moment to ask. Alina smiled, the smile that had first captured me across grocery bags and neighborly concern. Who says you have to be the one to ask? 2 months later, on New Year's Eve, we gathered our chosen family in the garden behind the craftsman bungalow. Despite the winter chill, heaters warmed a tent strung with the same fairy lights from our celebration a year earlier. Lily stood beside me. Elena's museum colleagues flanked her. And in the front row sat her sons alongside their father Daniel and his new wife, a family reconfigured but healing. Elena wore a simple dress in deep green velvet. I wore a charcoal suit with a tie she had selected. There was no white gown, no formal wedding party, no traditional processional, just two people who had weathered illness and judgment to find something rare and precious together. We gathered today, began our friend Julian, who had agreed to officiate. Not to join two people who are separate, but to celebrate to people who have already joined their lives through choice, through challenge, and through love that transcends conventional boundaries. Elena's hand was warm in mine as we exchanged vows we had written together. I choose you, I promised. Not despite our differences, but because of them. Not in ignorance of life's uncertainties, but in full awareness of them. I choose you today, tomorrow, and for all the days we are granted together. I choose you. Elena echoed, her voice steady and sure, as my partner, my advocate, my greatest joy. I choose to build a life with you that defies expectations and embraces possibilities. I choose you, Mason, with my whole heart and without reservation. As we exchanged simple bands, hers, gold, mine silver, both engraved with the word choose on the inside, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From torn grocery bags to cancer treatment, from worldwide travel to professional reinvention, we had continually chosen each other through circumstances neither of us could have anticipated. Later, as our guests celebrated around us and Alina danced with her sons while I chatted with my parents who had finally, grudgingly, accepted our relationship after meeting Alina, in person I felt a tap on my shoulder. Diane Wheeler stood there, champagne glass in hand, looking uncharacteristically thoughtful. I owe you both an apology, she said without preamble. I was judgmental and unkind about your relationship. I spread gossip I knew wasn't true. Surprised by her candor, I simply nodded, waiting for her to continue. Watching Alina go through cancer, seeing how you stood by her. Diane shook her head. It made me question a lot of assumptions about age, about what makes a relationship valid. She glanced across the tent to where Alina was laughing with her museum colleagues. You two have something real. Something many people never find. Thank you for saying that, I said, genuinely touched by her admission. It means a lot. Midnight approached. Alina found her way back to my side. We stood together under the winter stars as our friends and family counted down the final seconds of the year. Any regrets? I asked softly, thinking of all we had experienced since that first evening with wine and grocery bags. Elena's eyes met mine, clear and certain, not one. You? I pulled her close as fireworks began to illuminate the sky above us, only that I didn't help you with groceries sooner. Her laughter, bright and real, joined the celebration around USA's sound of joy, of triumph, of possibility. Together we had faced illness and uncertainty, judgment and loss. Together we had discovered that love isn't about finding the perfect person at the perfect time, but about choosing each other, day after day, through whatever life brings. The grocery bags that had first brought us together had long since been recycled, their paper fibers transformed into something new. So too had we been transformed on into different people, but into our truest selves, revealed through the simple act of helping a neighbor and the profound choice to stay when she whispered, "I have wine." Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.